Welcome to The Gangster, Book 6 in the Galactic Football League series. Written and performed by Scott Sigler, The Gangster is suitable for ages 12 and up and contains graphic violence. The Gangster is also available as a signed, numbered, limited edition hardcover while supplies last. To order, go to scottsigler.com/store. Hello, junkies. I'm still on vacation, and it's awesome. I think it's awesome. I don't know because I'm recording this ahead of time. So I assume my vacation is full of writing and dog walks and scotch, but I can't say for sure. It may also be full of zombie monsters from the forest, flesh-eating disease, and a massive case of diarrhea. I can't say, but I hope I'm having a good time. Obviously, I'm recording this ahead of time, so I have no updates this week. But a reminder that if you ordered anything from scottsigler.com/store recently, we are not shipping until June 7th, 2021 at the earliest. But we will ship those girthy books, those sticky magnets, those sticky stickers, and the few t-shirts we still have in stock. And I would point out that the stickers are sticky because of the stuff on the back of the sticker, not for any other reason. Get your mind out of the gutter. So shop away. Since I recorded this early, I have no idea where I am in the second draft of GFL Book 7. But we have finished the final punch-ins for the audiobook of The Stone Wolves, a GFL novella that is 144,000 words. So it's a 500-page novella. It's very weird. I'm good with the words, but clearly not good with the numbers. Steve the Iceberg Rickyberg is hard at work finishing off that audiobook so we can upload it to Audible, iTunes, and Amazon. Since we're done with the punch-ins, we're done with the book. It is also being formatted for ebook, and the ebook and the audiobook will be out at the same time, which is soon, but we don't know when The Stone Wolves will be available. It is the first novella that I'm declaring a mandatory read. So you're going to have GFL Book 1, 2, so it goes the rookie, the starter, the all-pro, the MVP, the champion, the Stone Wolves, the gangster, and then GFL Book 7. So that is where it is all at. I am telling my future self to go back to having another scotch and maybe another dog walk and hopefully avoid the massive case of dysentery, because with zombies come dysentery. I don't know if you knew that. It's a little known fact that all of the major zombie TV shows and movies, there's a whole dysentery subplot going on, but they don't show it to you because of ratings. It's just really weird. So let's get you caught up on the story. Then we're all going to go fluff up a nice goose down pillow. With the crew of the Olorun backing his play, Quentin seeks to end the threat of Gredok the Splithead for good. But before he can implement his plan, Quentin must get help from a very unlikely source. Inside contact. Killian had led Quentin from the Olorun back into the borehole and back into a cell. A cell with an open door. Quentin wasn't chained, he wasn't restrained, and he wasn't a prisoner, yet still he couldn't stop shaking. How long did he have to wait here? He felt weak. He felt small. He remembered how he'd begged, how he'd pleaded for it all to stop. This cell hadn't been his, but that didn't matter, because it was so much like his had been. Uneven stone floor, rough-hewn stone walls. The smell of the rock had him twitching, waiting for the shocks that had to be coming at any moment. He knew it was all in his head, he wasn't even connected to anything, but the pangs of torture past refused to let him go. Chalita Saccacorn, the doctor who was Killian's inside contact, had been put in a cell on this block. Killian had gone to fetch her. The borehole's layout reminded Quentin of Quith orbital stations. A wide shaft led into the asteroid, ending in a hollowed-out chamber that allowed access to the internal structure. The shaft doubled as a landing field. The Olorun seemed to cling to the shaft's curved side, along with a utility shuttle, a handful of small fighter craft, and the ship that had brought Quentin to this awful place. A twinge of ghost pain shot through him, from ear to shoulder. He winced, his head twitching involuntarily to the side. He shouldn't have come here. He should have just had Sakakorn brought to the Olorun. He had to get out of this room. He had to get out. He had to get out. Quentin sucked in a sharp breath. He made fists, ground them into his temples so hard it seemed like he could feel knuckles pressing into gray matter. The prison staff is locked up, he muttered. They're all locked up. They can't put me on the X. Calm down. Just calm down. His heart kicked like a machine gun. He tried to take a slow breath, couldn't draw breath at all. The room, it was getting smaller. The shackles dug into his arms, his legs. You're not wearing shackles. It's all in your head. He smelled his own sweat. The real shocks were coming, any second now. They would rip through him, and he would try to hold on, but he already knew he would beg and plead to be set free. Quentin. His father's voice. Quentin opened his eyes. In the open cell doorway stood Killian and a woman Quentin recognized, the doctor who had examined him in his cell. This is Chelita Sakakorn, Killian said. The same short, gray hair, same wrinkled eyes, same gray tech uniform, but she was taller than Quentin had thought, only a few inches shorter than Killian. She stared at Quentin, shook her head. Whatever you all have planned, he better not be an active part of it, she said. He's a wreck. I'm fine, Quentin snapped. No thanks to you and the other sadists in this place. Sakakorn's eyes widened. She took a step back. Take it easy, Killian said to Quentin. Just relax. Quentin blinked, shook his head. He realized his hands were still fists, that his face was twisted into a snarl. He forced himself to calm down. Sorry, he said. But he wasn't. Maybe she'd helped with his rescue, but she was part of the borehole staff. She was just as complicit in Quentin's torture as the guards who had chained him to the metal X, as the bats who had flipped the switch. I get you're angry, Sakakorn said. But that doesn't change the fact that someone needs to pay me or no one gets out of here. And yeah, I know if you don't get out of here, we all go down together, so spare me any shucking lecture. I got away with the first escape. I know they won't bust me for this one for a while, but eventually they will. So eventually I need to vanish. For that, I need vanishing money. In other words, I don't get paid. They will find me no matter what I do. I'll wind up in a cell myself. You need to pay me, Barnes. Your older lookalike spent the money I was owed, so you need to cover his debt and yours. Quentin glanced at his father. You had it and you spent it? We needed repairs, Killian said. Like I told you, it's a long story. Tell her what your plan is. Let's get this over with. Someday, hopefully, Quentin could hear that story, but this wasn't the time. The smell of this cell, the walls, so close. He needed to finish this and get out of there. The bats must have questioned all the staff after Yitzhak escaped, Quentin said, forcing the words out through a mouth that wanted to scream, not talk. You didn't crack? Sakakorn nodded. Question is an understatement. They interrogated everyone, including me. My session lasted 5 hours. I handled it. I'm a good liar. I don't doubt it. Quentin pushed his boiling, illogical panic down to a manageable level. He stepped closer to Sakakorn, to this woman who had been a part of his agony. They question you. Did they torture you? She stared back at him, a new look on her face. No, they didn't torture me. Spare me the life lesson. Give me my 1,000,000 credits and we'll go our separate ways. Maybe she'd get caught. If so, maybe they would torture her. That wouldn't bother Quentin in the least. 1,000,000 isn't much vanishing money, he said. So I have an offer for you. If you're a good liar, how would you like to make 3,000,000? Sakakorn controlled her reaction, but not before Quentin saw right through that effort. The woman was going to wind up on the run sooner or later, and she needed every credit she could get. I'm listening, she said. The promise of riches had a powerful pull. This woman had already risked her future and her safety. How much further would she go? Quentin was flying blind. He was making a big assumption. He knew that Richfield would do anything for him, but how much money did she have? Millions, she'd said. Hopefully, she had enough. 3,000,000 to cover your risk for both escapes, Quentin said, and to deliver a message to a gangster on Ionath. Delivering was only half of what he needed done, but he wanted to let the significance of that much money grow in her mind. Money was like that. The longer you thought about it, the more attractive it became. $3 million isn't enough, she said. Not for something like that. Ah, she wanted to negotiate. She was willing to take the huge risk, but only if the price was right. You can get more, Quentin said, if you can make a deal with the gangster in question. The information you will deliver, he will want that very badly. It's a safe bet to say he'll cough up another $500,000, at least. He could see the want in her eyes. He could also see the hubris. For some reason, she already assumed she could get more. Dr. Chelita Saccacorn thought she was special, better at everything. This gangster's name? Gredok the Splithead, Quentin said. Saccacorn shrugged. Never heard of him. That was both good and bad. Good, because she wasn't scared off by Griedock's reputation. Bad, because she needed to be scared, at least a little, so her arrogance wouldn't cause problems. Wait, she said. Griedock, was he the sentient who negotiated the peace deal with the Prowett? Quentin nodded. Why not go along with it? I need my first $1 million before I talk to anyone, Saccacorn said. How are you going to manage that? If you're ready to run, can I assume that you have an account somewhere that is not in your name? Saccacorn hesitated, as if revealing that information might cost her, but she had few options left. I do, she said. Then this will be easy, Quentin said. I have a friend on Ionath that will set up 2 anonymous transfers to you. The first transfer will be immediate for $500,000. That's the down payment. If you want to vanish with that much and not complete the deal, go crazy. Saccacorn shook her head. No, I want a full $1 million as the down payment. Not gonna happen, Quentin said. I'll still be here at the borehole, and I need to know you're motivated enough to finish the job. She stared at him. Quentin studied her, watched her eyes. He saw a vein in her neck. He watched it in his peripheral vision, quietly measuring her pulse. Even though she was up against it, she gave zero indication of stress. Was she good enough to fool Griedock? With the message she would be delivering, maybe she was. $500,000 up front. She seemed to try the words on for size. How do I know you're good for the rest? You don't, Quentin said. You'll have to take that chance, just like I'm taking a chance that you won't bail with the $500,000. Remember that I'm staying here. She frowned. Which I can't count on if I release the missile lock, which I need to do to go see your friend on Ionath and deliver your message. I have a better idea, which I'll get to in a moment. First, though, let's say I deliver this message to Griedock. Then I just come back here and I get the rest of my money? Forgive me if that sounds too easy. What's the catch? Time to drop the other shoe. If she didn't go for this, Quentin didn't know what he'd do next. The catch is that you have to bring Griedock back with you. Her eyes widened. Here? To the borehole? Quentin nodded. That's right. Why would he do that? To see me, Quentin said. Your position at the prison will be the validity he needs to buy in. I know him. He'll insist on bringing his yacht back, and you'll have to be on it with him. Saccacorn laughed, shook her head. Oh, all right. Sounds like an easy thing to do, she said. And what, exactly, do you plan to do with him when he gets here? Not your concern. She absently rubbed at her jaw. Let's say I can bring him back here, she said. Then you put a bullet in my head and don't have to pay the rest of the money? No thanks. Killian took a step closer. When I was last here, I didn't kill anyone, he said, including you. I could have, and you know it. I know you didn't get paid. I know I don't have the money you're owed, but Quentin does. This is your last shot at a big payday, Doctor. To get it, you're going to have to roll the bones and trust him. If you don't, then you'll wind up on the run with no money at all. Quentin wasn't happy Killian had stepped into the negotiation, but his words seemed to resonate with Saccacorn. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. Yes, you could have killed me. She looked at Quentin. And if Griedock sees through this ruse? I thought you were a good liar, he said. I am an exceptional liar. What happens if Griedock sees through my story? No point in beating around the bush. If he sees through it, you probably die. and he's among the best in the galaxy at knowing when a human is lying to him. Sakakorn smiled. I was interrogated by the Bats and their League of Planets cronies, she said. If their intimidation and lie detection gear didn't out me, your peace deal making gangster acquaintance won't either. So much arrogance in that smile. Enough to make her overconfident. Enough for her to not take Griedock seriously. But then again, Sakakorn believed in herself, and the key to being a great liar was to believe the lie you were telling, at least while you were telling it. Hopefully she could pull it off, because she wasn't the only one with few options left. 500,000 when I get to Ionath, before I see Griedock, Sakakorn said. Then 2.5 mil when I bring Griedock back here. Is that right? Quentin nodded. As soon as I'm out of the quiescence, yes. I'll have my friend set up the transfer with authorization by me. Agreed? Agreed, Sakakorn said. And the deal I make with Griedock, what's your cut of that? No cut. Anything you get from him, you keep. She stared, considering the risks, considering a payoff significantly larger than the one she'd initially asked for. Then we might be in business, she said, but I'm not removing the missile lock. Killian took another step forward. Quentin held up a hand toward him. Let her finish, Quentin said. If she's not removing the missile lock, she must have something else in mind. Killian took a step back. You're quite perceptive, Sakakorn said to Quentin. I do have something else in mind, something that will cost you a bit more, but the money isn't for me. The Carcelero is the ship that brought you here from the Hammerwind. It's unmarked and nondescript, looks like a typical private vessel. It has a special Imperial military clearance beacon. Crederakian ships, system police, you name it, they ignore the Carcelero. In all Imperial-controlled territory, its flight routes are never tracked or recorded. The Bats don't like having multiple ships come here, so for most prisoner pickups and most resupply, the Carcelero makes those runs. Killian nodded, even half smiled. He already liked the idea. If that ship travels to and from here on a normal basis, it's the way to go, Killian said. Especially if it has clearance she says it has. Just because I got my ship here twice undetected doesn't mean I'll be as fortunate a third time. Quentin read between the lines, saw the real reason for Killian's approval. Less risk to Beans, Aya, and Zan. It really was a better plan. I'll go with her, Killian said. Sakakorn laughed again. No, you won't. Your big ass and your ship will stay right here until I get back. You might not make it back, Killian said. If you don't, my ship is stuck here. Sakakorn smiled, shrugged. Your ship isn't going anywhere unless I let it go, so I guess you'll have to, what was that phrase again? Oh yes, you'll have to roll the bones and trust me. Killian sneered slightly. He didn't like having his own words used against him. Quentin had to admit that this option left most of the power in Sakakorn's hands, but what choice did he have? He was asking a lot of her, yet she was showing her strength. The way she handled this negotiation gave Quentin no small amount of hope that she could convince Griedock. If her taking the Carcelero meant less risk to Killian, Aya, Beans, and Zan, then that was a good thing. All right, Quentin said. We do it your way. But he won't come here in that ship either. He'll take one of his own, probably the little ruler, his yacht. And you'll still have to be on it or he won't come. That should still work, Sakakorn said. If his yacht follows close behind the Carcelero's beacon will make sure neither ship is detained. I need the Carcelero's 2 sentient crew to pilot it, which is why it will cost you more. They're locked up, just like everyone else. Tiger Stripe and Angel Wings. They were in a cell. Quentin found some small satisfaction at that. How much? Quentin asked. 250,000 each, Sakakorn said. That ought to do it. Can your money friend on Ionath cover that as well? Quentin hoped Richfield could. Of course, he said. Can we trust them not to talk? They'll keep their mouths shut, Sakakorn said. They know if word of this gets out, they'll be the ones on the X. As you've seen for yourself, Barnes, that's pretty solid motivation. She was right about that. 3.5 million to possibly lure Griedock here. He would figure out how to pay Richfield and the COQB back, every credit of it. But if this plan worked, it was worth all the money he had to his name. You'll have to carry a message to my friend, Quentin said.
When you do, she will give you something to bring back to me. You'll be with Griedock when you first get back, so we'll get that item from the Carcelero crew. You or the 2 crew members even look at what's in the package, and the deal is off. Acceptable?"
Saccacorn nodded. Acceptable. Tiger Stripe or Angel Wings could get the Gibblejewants from Richfield. Quentin could tell them exactly what to say. It could work.
"Then ask the Carcelero crew," Quentin said. "I want you on your way immediately."
Book 6. Self-Defense. The Bridge. The bridge didn't have sliding doors. A heavy oval hatch provided access, making the freighter seem more like a military vessel. Inside the bridge, however, no one would mistake the vessel for a warship. The round room was just like the rest of the Olorun, very old and heavily modified from its original design. A large holotank sat in the center of the room, roughly bolted down like so many other additions inside the ship. Missing service panels, some with curls of exposed wiring dangling out. Empty flat panel brackets lined the wall near the ceiling. One bracket had been filled with old stuffed animals, a strange menagerie of colors and googly eyes staring out. One old flat panel was still in place, but it was covered with printed photos of the crew, 1 or 2 at a time, laughing, hugging each other, wearing funny hats, goofing off in general.
"You control the ship from here," Quentin said. "Seriously?"
His father sat in a captain's chair in the center of the bridge. Duct tape on the chair, tiny bits of foam trying to slip free from the covered tears. Some of the tape strips were blue or red, but most were silver. A drink holder was bolted onto the chair's left side, the neck of a clear beer bottle jutting up. A beer holder. On a bridge. Maybe Killian's drinking wasn't all that casual. Maybe the man had a problem. Killian waved his hands over the duct-taped armrests. Holo displays blinked on in front of him. A scratched floor-to-ceiling crystal window let Quentin look out into the borehole's landing shaft and the strange fighter craft still locked in their mooring grips. The fighters were of Hurrah design, a sphere roughly 10 meters in diameter, bristling with armaments and maneuvering thrusters, the main drive sticking out. The ships looked like black medieval maces with stubby handles. The rest of the crew filtered into the bridge, taking what Quentin assumed were their regular stations. He recognized the general configuration of a navigation console, with what looked like tactical controls added on. Schmeck Zan stood there. The engineering section, where Beans curled up like a 40-pound cat, was a hodgepodge of thrown-together equipment, most of which Quentin didn't recognize. Aya controlled the ship's communications, but Quentin had never seen the like of her station. Smooth surfaces covered in what looked like snakeskin. Was that key tech?
"This bridge is a mess," Quentin said. "It looks like someone put the parts of 5 wrecked ships in a box and shook it until they all sort of fit together."
Killian turned his chair away from the bridge window so he could face his crew. "If you don't like the accommodations, feel free to get out and walk. Beans, what's the status on Saccacorn's missile launcher?"
Deactivate it,
the fuzzy Sklorno said.
"I had to create a signal jam that lasted long enough for me to get Peaches in there and disengage the homing system. Oh, Zan, sorry. Peaches is no more."
Quentin glanced at Aya.
"Peaches," he said. "Is that more slang I don't get?"
Aya rolled her eyes. These people were insane, all 4 of them.
"Perhaps you could have asked me first,"
Schmeckzan said.
"Common courtesy would dictate as much, would it not?"
Sorry,
Bean said.
"But it's good. Missile battery is out of commission. Aya and I tree-tagged it."
"Tag-teamed it," Aya said. Beans' fur fluffed.
"Why would we put a tag on a team?"
The amethyst-skinned girl rolled her eyes. She was as good at that as Killian was at shrugging. Perhaps all 4 of the insane crew members had some special way of being annoying. "Beans, I love you," she said, "but sometimes it's slapex bacuna to understand what you're saying." Killian rubbed his eyes. Whether he was just tired or exhausted by his comms operator's lack of self-awareness, Quentin couldn't tell. "Good job, crew," Killian said. "This means we can get out of here in a hurry if we need to. But first, we have a mission to complete.
The Olorun is the biggest ship in the landing shaft, by far, and it's clearly not military. Quentin, could that alert Griedock? If he sees it, could he smell the threat and leave before he comes in? Griedock was smart, brilliant, but he also liked to see things through. He'd never been to the borehole before. He wouldn't know one ship from another, at least not enough to make him bail out and run, especially when he still needed the Carcelero to get cleanly away from Gredockian territory. I'm more worried about Sakacorn, Quentin said. As cool and confident as she is, I promise you she will be stressed out after being with a killer like Griedock for a couple of days. When his yacht comes in, if she happens to be in a position where she can see the shaft and the Olorun isn't there, that could scare her. Griedock would pick up on that. Leave your ship where it is. Killian looked at each of his crew in turn. Aya nodded. The teddy bear's arms and legs jostled when Zan nodded. Beans made a noise that could have been a grunt of approval or a fart. Quentin wasn't sure which. We'll leave the Olorun where it is, Killian said. A grunt of approval, apparently. Let's recap the plan, Killian said. Assuming Griedock is actually dumb enough to fall for this, he'll be here in 2 days. When he arrives, we need to separate Dr. Sakacorn from him and his guards so they don't lash out against her once the riot control gas starts flowing. Aya's hands caressed the skins. Data readouts appeared in the air above them. Yeah, about that, she said. We drained the borehole's tanks when I made the rioters go sleepy time. Killian glared at her. You used all of it? You told me to let everyone out of their cells? That's a lot of rioters. It's not like any of us thought we'd stay here after getting Quentin out, you echo? Quentin's stomach churned, almost as bad as it did during punch-in or punch-out. Just because Killian's crew was taking this all in stride didn't mean they weren't aware of the risks they faced when Griedock and his guards arrived. Among those guards, without a doubt, would be Virak the Mean. We'll figure out another way then, Killian said. Let's go over what we do know. Sakacorn told me a fighter always comes out to escort the Carcelero in. She may have told Griedock the same thing. We want to make everything look as normal as possible. Beans, can you modify a Schmeck so you can use it to fly one of the fighters docked in the shaft? The male Sklorno shook briefly like a wet dog.
No can do, Skipper. I would need to make a flying mech that can move like a Gredockian or Harada operate inside the control sphere. That would take about a week.
Killian cursed under his breath. We need that fighter escort, he said. What if you were in the fighter? Could you hack the controls enough to operate it yourself? The Sklorno stretched in his little chair.
Yeah, I can,
he said.
Rudimentary controls only. If there's any kind of a dogfight, I'll lose.
Killian glanced at Quentin. You said you think Griedock will come here in his yacht. Is it armed? The little ruler, Quentin said. I've never been on it. I don't know if it's armed, but knowing Griedock, it probably is. Killian nodded as if he'd expected that answer. Then we need to make sure that ship is neutralized, he said. Beans, you'll have to stay in the fighter so the yacht pilot doesn't try anything. All right, back to Griedock and his guards. We have no knockout gas. Options?
Kill the guards,
Beans said.
If we don't, we're asking for trouble.
The image of Virak gunned down. It didn't sit right. Quentin and Virak had never gotten along, but the warrior was a kraken, a teammate. We're not killing unless we have to, Killian said. Other ideas, people. Come on, think. Zan's stuffed animal face twitched.
This is a prison,
She said.
with uniforms, possibly riot armor. Skipper and Aya could pass as guards. When Griedock arrives, tell him that his team cannot bring weapons into the facility. Then you will have them at gunpoint. Put them in restraints. Put them in a cell.
Virak's speed, his ferocity, even getting close to him posed a risk. And what other guards might Griedock have with him? Loyal underlings, willing to risk their lives to do whatever the leader said. There's no way his bodyguards will let you put restraints on them, Quentin said. Griedock will not allow himself to be taken so easily. He'll sacrifice his own people at the drop of a hat. This had the makings of a messy situation, one where Killian's people could get hurt. Killian stood. We're not going to ask their permission. I think I have a way to get them to walk right into a cell. If we move fast, we can lock them in before they fully realize what's happening. Aya, Zan's right. You and I can pass as guards. Are you up for it? It's going to be dangerous, and you can't use your tough luck gun. Quentin looked from Killian to Aya. Tough luck gun? It's a non-lethal rifle, she said. Fires solid rubber balls. Why can't I use it, Skipper? You know how I feel about hurting sentience. I know, Killian said. But if we're going to pass for guards, we need to use guard weapons. The tough luck gun looks like a toy. It will catch their attention and create doubt in our disguises. And I can't emphasize this enough, with Griedock's goons, if we need to fire on them, we need to put them down. If we shoot to kill. Understand? Aya paused, considering Killian's words. Quentin sensed her trepidation. She was worried about what the rest of the crew might think of her answer. Oh, I'll do it, she said. But come on, Skipper, I'm tiny. If there are helmets with face shields, couldn't you and Junior pose as guards? Isn't that more realistic? With dread in his eyes, Killian looked at Quentin. For my idea to work, the older man said, I'm afraid Quentin has another role to play.
You have been listening to The Gangster, Book 6 in the Galactic Football League series, written and narrated by Scott Ziegler. Follow Scott on Instagram and Twitter, where he is at Scott Ziegler, one word, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Scott Ziegler. For more information on the Galactic Football League series and for more free audiobook podcasts, visit scottziegler.com. The Gangster was directed by A. Ziegler, engineered by Steve Rickyberg. Copyright 2020, Empty Set Entertainment. Theme music is the song They're Watching Me by the band Superweapon.